For more, I'm joined here in studio by our European Affairs editor, Catherine Nicholson. Catherine, just take us through what's likely to happen today in Strasbourg at the European Parliament.
All right, so in just about an hour's time, the actual debate on this is going to get going, and it is a big day for Hungary and for the EU. Some of the members of the European Parliament are going to be setting out why they believe that Hungary has contravened some really basic European values that are written down in the European Union's own treaties. And as you mentioned, they're preparing for an unprecedented vote on suspending Hungary's voting rights within the EU. This is under Article 7. So if people have heard about Article 7, this is what we're talking about. So the rapporteur on this is an MEP, Judith Sargentini. She says that Hungarian citizens just can't rely on getting fair treatment from their own government anymore. She's set out some concrete examples in her report. For example, she says that there's misuse of EU funds, widespread corruption in this. For example, funds meant to improve infrastructure for ordinary Hungarians going into this sort of niche railway line between two villages where Viktor Orban himself grew up, and only a couple of hundred people ever use this each day. Independent media disappearing from the media landscape. And the last independent TV station taken over by one of Viktor Orban's friends in the summer is now accused of being a mouthpiece for the Orban government. Restriction of the independence of the judiciary, the government accused of breaching academic freedom. There's quite a list of accusations here. So, as you said, the most watched moment is probably going to be when Viktor Orban himself gets to speak and give that frank and outspoken defence that you mentioned. His spokesman in Budapest has already said that for them, they consider this to be a witch hunt and very dangerous by the European Parliament.
And talk us through what the consequences could be for Budapest and for the rest of Europe. Hungary is, of course, threatened with sanctions from the EU.
Indeed, as we said, unprecedented sanctions. Now, of course, what's happening today could see Hungary and the EU heal some of their rifts, but it could escalate into a situation where we haven't been before. And some are saying that it could start to shatter the European political landscape as well. More on that later. First off, no member state's ever had its voting rights suspended under Article 7. This is the first time that the European Parliament itself has spoken out under Article 7. So the actual vote is going to be happening tomorrow after everyone's had a chance to have their say and put their questions this afternoon. The motion would need to get 2/3 support in the European Parliament to move forward. There are sort of questions over whether that motion will get that support, whether Viktor Orban will perhaps make some concessions. He's a member of the biggest group within the European Parliament, the EPP, their centre-right group, and its leader has said that he's expecting Orban to make some concessions, for example, on university rights. However, there are indications that some members of the EPP are not supporting Viktor Orban. For example, Austria's Chancellor, Austria's ruling party, is saying that his members will vote against Hungary. So outside of the EPP, Viktor Orban has some supporters, notably among the more far-right and populist elements. It is believed that depending on how this goes today and tomorrow, Viktor Orban could take his Fidesz party out of this EPP centre-right group, go with a more hard-right alliance in the European Parliament. We've got European elections coming up next May, and so if this happens and we now have a split of the right wing, centre-right and hard-right groups really separated in that way, then that really is quite significant going into those elections next May.